You ever wonder what it'd be like to hide who you really are? To let the world see a version of you that's nothing like the truth? Just to test their hearts? That's what I did. My name's Eleanor. And for years, I let my son David believe I was just an ordinary woman. A single mom scraping by, working some desk job, living in a modest apartment with thrift store clothes and a beat-up purse. He never knew I was pulling in $50,000 a month as a top executive at a global tech firm, steering billion-dollar deals and managing teams across continents. Why keep it a secret? Because I didn't want money to define me. Or him. I wanted David to grow up grounded, to value hard work, not bank accounts. I wanted him to see life through effort, not entitlement. And I lived that way too. Simple, quiet, invisible wealth. No fancy cars, no designer bags. Just a life built on discipline and dignity. But last week, everything changed. David called me, his voice tight, like he was bracing for something. Mom, Sarah's parents are in town from London. They want to meet you. We're having dinner Saturday at this upscale restaurant downtown. Please come. There was something in his tone, a hesitation like he was worried I'd embarrass him. I asked, "What did you tell them about me?" A pause. Then, "Just that you're, simple. You work in an office, live alone, don't have much." Simple. That word stung, reducing my life to a single syllable. But I stayed calm. "All right, David, I'll be there." I hung up, looked around my cozy, unassuming apartment. Old couch, small TV, no frills, and made a decision. If they thought I was a nobody, I'd let them. I'd show up as the poor, naive mother they expected. I wanted to see how they'd treat someone they thought had nothing. Call it a test, call it intuition. But I knew Sarah's parents, Richard and Margaret, were the kind who judged people by their wallets. And I was rarely wrong about people. Saturday came. I dug through my closet for the drabbest outfit I owned. A faded navy dress, shapeless, something you'd find on a clearance rack. Scuffed flats, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, and a worn canvas tote that screamed struggle. I looked in the mirror and saw exactly what I wanted. A woman life had chewed up and spit out. Perfect. I took an Uber to the restaurant, a glittering spot in Manhattan where the plates cost more than most people's rent. The kind of place where the wine list reads like a mortgage application. As we pulled up, I felt this mix of excitement and dread. Excitement because I was about to unmask some truths. Dread because part of me hoped I was wrong, that they'd see past the disguise, that they'd treat me with kindness. But the part of me that spent decades navigating corporate boardrooms, that part knew better. I stepped out of the car, took a deep breath and walked in. The place was all crystal chandeliers and hushed voices, the air thick with money. David stood by a table near the floor-to-ceiling windows, dressed in a sharp suit looking nervous. Sarah was next to him, flawless in a sleek black dress, her blonde hair perfect. But her eyes darted away when she saw me. And there they were. Richard and Margaret seated like they owned the place. Margaret wore a ruby-red dress, dripping with diamonds, her face all sharp angles and fake warmth. Richard, in a tailored suit, had a watch that probably cost a year's salary for most. They looked like they'd walked out of a Forbes cover shoot. I shuffled toward them, playing the part. Small steps, timid smile. David's eyes widened when he saw me. "Mom, you made it," he said, his voice tight like he was already regretting this. "Of course, honey." I replied softly, my tone shaky, like I was out of place. Sarah gave me a quick, cold hug. "Good to see you, Eleanor." Her words said one thing. Her eyes said another. She introduced me to her parents, her voice apologetic. "Mom, Dad, this is David's mother." Margaret's eyes flicked over me. Dress, shoes, tote, and I saw it. The judgment, the dismissal. She extended a manicured hand. "A pleasure," she said, her grip limp. Richard's handshake was just as weak, his smile forced. Charmed. I sat at the far end of the table, the spot nobody wanted, like an afterthought. No one offered to pull out my chair. The waiter handed out menus, leather-bound, written in French. I opened mine and furrowed my brow, pretending to be lost. Margaret noticed. "Need help with the menu, Eleanor?" Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were cold. "Oh, yes, please," I said, shrinking into my chair. "I'm not used to these places." She sighed. "Like I was a chore and ordered for me. Something light," she said to the waiter. "Nothing too expensive." The table went quiet. David looked at his plate. Sarah fiddled with her napkin. Richard nodded like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. And I just watched, taking it all in, letting them dig their own graves. Dinner started, and so did the performance. Theirs, not mine. Margaret took the lead, her voice polished, every word dripping with self-importance. She talked about their trip from London, the first-class flight, the 5-star hotel costing $200 a night. "You have to splurge on quality," she said, glancing at me, expecting me to gape. I just nodded, playing dumb. "That sounds nice," I mumbled, my voice small. Richard chimed in, bragging about their rented Bentley, the designer shops they'd hit on 5th Avenue. "Just a few purchases," he said. "Nothing crazy? Maybe 10 grand? He looked at me, waiting for a reaction. I gave him a weak smile. "Wow, that's a lot." Margaret leaned in, her diamond earrings catching the light. "So, Eleanor, what do you do?" Her tone was syrupy, but the question was a blade. I looked down, fidgeting with my napkin. "Oh, I work in an office. Just, paperwork, filing, that sort of thing." She sipped her $250 wine, swirling it like a connoisseur. "This is a Bordeaux," she said. "You have to train your palate for this kind of thing." "Have you ever tried a vintage like this, Eleanor?" I shook my head. "Just cheap stuff on special occasions." She smirked. "Not everyone gets the chance to refine their tastes. It takes exposure, travel, education." Richard nodded. "We've been to vineyards in Tuscany, Bordeaux, Napa. It's a passion of ours. Sarah's picking it up too." Sarah gave a weak smile, saying nothing. I could see her discomfort, but she stayed silent. Margaret kept going, asking about my life, my apartment, my struggles. Each question was a jab, each comment a way to remind me I was less. And I let her, because every word was building their trap. I wanted them to feel safe in their arrogance, to show me exactly who they were. Then Margaret dropped the bomb. "Eleanor, we've been thinking we could help you out. A small monthly stipend, maybe $600 to make things easier. You wouldn't have to worry so much, and David could focus on his marriage." My heart stopped, not from shock, but from clarity. This was it, their real play. Pay me off to fade away, to stop being the embarrassing, poor mother-in-law. David's face went red. "Mom, stop," he said, but Margaret pressed on. "It's just practical, David. We want you and Sarah to have freedom, not burdens. Burdens." There it was. I was the burden. I set my napkin down, took a slow sip of water, and let the silence stretch. Everyone was watching me. Margaret with smug confidence, Richard with detached approval, Sarah with shame, David with desperation. I leaned forward, my voice no longer timid but calm, steady, sharp. "That's a generous offer, Margaret. Really kind of you." Her smile widened, thinking she'd won. "But let me ask you something," I continued. "How much is $600 supposed to buy? My silence? My absence from my son's life?" Margaret blinked, caught off guard. "That's not what I meant," she stammered. "Oh, I think it's exactly what you meant," I said, my tone ice cold. The table went still. The game was about to change. The air in the restaurant shifted like the moment before a storm breaks. Margaret's smug smile faltered, her fingers tightening around her wine glass. Richard cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Eleanor, you're misunderstanding our intentions," he said, his voice smooth but strained. I tilted my head, keeping my eyes locked on Margaret. "Am I? Because it sounds like you're offering me $600 a month to disappear, to stop being a burden to my son and your daughter. Did I get that wrong?" Sarah stared at her plate, her hands trembling. David's jaw was tight, his eyes pleading with me to stop. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Margaret tried to recover, her voice sugary again. "We just want to help, Eleanor. You live so modestly. We thought a little support could ease things for you. Let David and Sarah focus on their future." I nodded slowly, letting her words hang there. Exposed. "Help," I repeated. "Like the $50,000 you gave them for the house? The $20,000 for the honeymoon?" Margaret's eyes lit up proud. "Exactly. We've always been generous with Sarah. It's what parents do." I leaned forward, my voice still calm but cutting. "And what did that generosity buy you, Margaret? Their gratitude? Their loyalty? Or just their obedience?" The table froze. Richard shifted uncomfortably. "That's uncalled for," he said. "Is it?" I asked, turning to him. "Because all night you've both been talking about money. Your hotel, your car, your shopping sprees. You've measured everything by what it costs, including me. And now you're offering me pocket change to vanish. So tell me, what's my price? 600? 700? How much is it worth to erase me from David's life?" Margaret's face flushed, her composure cracking. "You're twisting this," she snapped. "We're trying to be kind." "Kind?" I said, my voice rising just enough to draw eyes from nearby tables. "Kind is asking how I'm doing, if I'm happy, if I need a friend. Kind is treating me like a person, not a problem. But you didn't do that. You looked at my clothes, my bag, my shoes, and decided I was worthless. You spent this entire dinner reminding me I'm beneath you." Sarah's eyes welled up, but she said nothing. David reached for my hand under the table, but I pulled back. I wasn't here to be comforted. I was here to be heard. Margaret tried to pivot. Eleanor, you're clearly upset. But we meant no harm. We just want what's best for our daughter. I smiled, but it wasn't warm. And what's best for Sarah is a mother-in-law who's invisible, right? Someone who won't embarrass you with her simple life? Richard jumped in, his tone sharp. You're being unfair. We've been nothing but polite. I raised an eyebrow. Polite? You ordered my food because you assumed I couldn't afford it. You pitied my job, my home, my entire existence. That's not politeness, Richard. That's condescension. The waiter approached, sensing the tension, and dropped off the check. Nobody touched it. I leaned back, my posture no longer small or timid. Let me tell you something about me, I said, my voice steady, commanding. 40 years ago, I was a single mom with nothing, no family, no support, just a baby, and a minimum wage job answering phones. I lived in a one-room apartment, ate rice and beans, and worked 16-hour days. I raised David alone, no handouts, no safety net, and I didn't just survive. I built something. Margaret's eyes narrowed, skeptical. David stared at me, his face pale like he was seeing me for the first time. I studied nights, learned finance, coding, strategy. I climbed from receptionist to manager, then to director, and now I'm the chief operating officer of a tech giant. I earn $50,000 a month, half for 15 years. That's millions in savings, investments, stock options. I oversee operations in 7 countries, manage budgets bigger than your net worth. The silence was deafening. Margaret's mouth opened, then closed. Richard's fork clattered to his plate. Sarah's eyes were wide, her hand covering her mouth. David whispered, Mom, why didn't you tell me? I looked at him, my voice softening. Because you didn't need to know, honey. I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not cash. I wanted you to be a man, not a trust fund kid. Money changes people, David, and I wasn't going to let it change you. Margaret found her voice, shaky now. This is absurd. If you're so successful, why live like this? Why the old clothes, the tiny apartment? I smiled, calm again. Because I don't need to prove anything. I don't need a mansion or a Rolex to feel whole. My wealth is in my peace, my freedom, my choices. Unlike you, I don't wear my bank account like a badge. Richard scoffed. You expect us to believe this? You show up looking like that, and now you're some corporate hotshot? I reached into my tote, pulled out a sleek, black metal card, my corporate Amex, unlimited limit, and slid it across the table. Check the name, I said. Eleanor Harper, COO. Margaret picked it up, her hands trembling. She turned it over, saw the embossed title, and her face drained of color. This is real? She stammered. Very real, I said. Pay the bill with it. Tip generously. Consider it my gift to you. A reminder that appearances lie. Margaret stared at the card like it was radioactive. Richard's arrogance faded, his shoulders slumping. Sarah was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. David looked at me, his eyes full of questions, pride and something else. Regret. Mom, he said, his voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I touched his hand, my voice gentle. You don't need to apologize. I chose this. I wanted you to see the world through your own eyes, not mine. But tonight I needed to see who they are. I turned to Margaret and Richard. And I did. I saw exactly who you are. You judged me, pitied me, tried to buy me off, all because you thought I was nothing. You showed your true colors, and they're not pretty. Margaret's voice was barely a whisper. We didn't mean to offend you. I shook my head. You meant every word, every look. You enjoyed it until you realized I'm not who you thought. Now you're scared. Because the poor woman you mocked has more power than you'll ever have. The waiter returned, hovering awkwardly. Anything else? He asked. Richard shook his head. Just the check. I stood, picking up my tote. No need, Richard. I've got this. Like I said, my treat. I walked away, leaving them staring at the black card, their world unraveling. I stepped out into the cool Manhattan night. the city's hum wrapping around me like a familiar song. The restaurant's glow faded behind me, but the weight of what just happened lingered. I'd planned to expose them, to peel back their polished masks, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt heavy, raw, like I'd ripped open a wound I didn't know I was carrying. David caught up to me, his footsteps quick on the sidewalk. "Mom, wait!" he called, his voice shaky. I stopped, turning to face him. His eyes were wide, searching, like he was meeting me for the first time. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. "All these years you let me think you were struggling. Why?" I sighed, the night air sharp in my lungs. "David, I didn't want you to grow up chasing money. I wanted you to chase meaning, to work for what you have, to know what it's like to earn your place. If I told you about my job, my salary, you might have leaned on it. You might have felt entitled. I couldn't let that happen." He shook his head, his voice cracking. "But I thought you were barely getting by. I worried about you, Mom. I thought you needed help." I smiled softly. "And that worry made you kind. It made you check on me, call me, care about me. That's worth more than any trust fund." He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I feel so stupid. I let Sarah's parents talk to you like that. I didn't stop them." I touched his arm. "You didn't know, David. You couldn't have. I chose to play the part tonight. I needed to see how they'd treat someone they thought was beneath them. And they showed me exactly what I suspected." His face darkened. "They were awful. The way they looked at you. The things they said. I'm ashamed I didn't say something sooner." I shook my head. "Don't carry their shame. That's on them, not you." An Uber pulled up and I opened the door, but David stopped me. "Mom, what happens now? With Sarah, with her parents? I mean, you dropped a bomb in there." I looked at him, my voice firm but kind. "Now you talk to Sarah. You set boundaries. You decide what kind of life you want with her, what kind of family you'll build. Her parents showed you who they are. Believe them. But Sarah, she's not them. Not yet. She can choose differently. But that's up to her. And you." He nodded, his eyes distant, processing. "I love you, Mom," he said, his voice thick. "I'm so proud of you." I hugged him, tight and warm. "I love you too, David. Always have, always will." I slid into the Uber, the driver glancing at me in the rearview mirror. He was older, maybe late 50s, with a weathered face and kind eyes. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone easy like we were old friends. I chuckled, leaning back. "You could say that." He nodded, pulling into traffic. "I've seen a lot of folks come out of that place. Most are laughing, drunk on wine and money. You look like you just fought a battle and won." I raised an eyebrow. "That obvious, huh?" He grinned. "Been driving 20 years. You learned to read people. Want to talk about it? I'm a stranger. No judgment, no baggage. I considered it, staring out at the city lights flashing by. I pretended to be someone I'm not tonight." I said finally. "Let some people think I was poor, struggling, just to see how they'd treat me." He let out a low whistle. "That's bold. And," I sighed, "they treated me like garbage. Judged me, pitied me, offered me money to stay out of their lives." His eyes met mine in the mirror, sharp with understanding. "Ouch. Bet they weren't expecting you to flip the script." I smiled faintly. "Not at all. Turns out I'm not who they thought. Let's just say I'm comfortable. Very comfortable." He laughed, a warm, gravelly sound. "I knew it. You've got that vibe, quiet power, like you don't need to shout to be heard." I tilted my head. "You're good at this." He shrugged. "Part of the job. Plus, you've got that beat-up bag, old shoes. But you talk like you run a boardroom. Doesn't add up." I laughed, genuinely this time. "You're sharp. Yeah, I run a boardroom. Big one. But I don't need the world to know." He nodded, respect in his eyes. "That's real wealth, not the flashy kind. The kind that lets you sleep at night." We drove in silence for a bit, the city's pulse steady outside. Then he spoke again. "You did the right thing, you know. Calling them out. People like that, they hide behind money, think it makes them better. But you? You showed him the mirror. That's power." His words hit deep, like he'd seen my soul without trying. "Thanks," I said softly. "I needed that." He waved it off. "Just truth. You're gonna be fine. You've got that calm, like someone who knows their worth." We pulled up to my building, a plain 6-story walk-up in a quiet part of Brooklyn. Nothing flashy, just home. He looked at it surprised. "This is you? No penthouse." I smiled. "Don't need one. This is enough." He shook his head, grinning. "You're something else." I handed him a $100 bill for the 25 fare. "Keep it," I said. His eyes widened. "Too much, lady." I shook my head. "Not for the perspective you just gave me. Worth every penny." He took the bill, nodding. "Take care, boss lady. Keep being you." I stepped out, the night air cool and grounding, and watched him drive off. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, slipped into pajamas and made tea. The silence was comforting, familiar. My place was small, faded couch, mismatched chairs, no fancy art. But it was mine. No pretense, no show. Just me. I sat by the window, the city's lights twinkling outside, and let the night's events settle. My phone buzzed. A text from David. "Mom, you okay? Got home safe?" I replied, "I'm fine, honey. Resting. Love you." His response was quick. "Love you too. I'm so sorry. You're incredible." I smiled, a tear slipping down my cheek. Not from pain, but from relief. I'd done what I needed to do. I'd spoken my truth. And it felt like freedom. Sunday morning came early, like it always does. 40 years of rising with the sun doesn't let you sleep in, even on a day off. I brewed coffee, strong and black, and sat by my window watching Brooklyn wake up. Kids ran to the bodega. Old men set up chessboards. Life moved on, oblivious to the drama of last night. My phone rang, pulling me from my thoughts. David's name flashed on the screen. "Morning, honey." I answered, my voice soft but steady. "Mom," he said, sounding drained like he hadn't slept. "I need to talk. Last night was a lot." I sipped my coffee. "I'm listening." He took a deep breath. "After you left, I went back inside. Sarah was a mess, crying. Her parents were still there, freaking out about their credit cards getting declined. It was humiliating for them, but honestly, I didn't care. I was so angry, Mom. I told them how I felt. How they treated you was disgusting. How they made me feel small for having a simple mom. I said I was ashamed to be tied to them." I set my mug down, surprised. David was quiet, but when he spoke, he meant it. "What did they say?" I asked. "Margaret got defensive," he said. "Said they were just looking out for Sarah. That they didn't mean to offend you. That they were being practical. Richard backed her up, said I was blowing it out of proportion. That you were the one who tricked them. I didn't let it slide. I told them they showed their true selves. Cruel, shallow, obsessed with status. I said you gave them a chance to be decent and they failed." I smiled faintly. "That's my boy." He laughed, a tired sound. "I learned it from you, Mom. You were fierce last night. I've never seen you like that." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I didn't want to be fierce, David. I just wanted to be honest. I needed to know who they are, and now I do." He went quiet, then said, "Sarah spoke up too. She told her parents they were wrong, that she saw every jab they threw at you, and she was ashamed. She said she didn't want to be like them, judging people by what they have. Margaret lost it, called Sarah ungrateful, said they'd sacrificed everything for her. Richard threatened to cut her off financially, like that's all she cares about." I shook my head. "Classic move. When they can't win, they threaten." "Exactly," David said. "But Sarah didn't back down. Neither did I. We told them we're setting boundaries. No more money talk, no more control, no more looking down on people. If they can't respect that, they'll see less of us." Margaret stormed out, saying we'd regret it. Richard said he's rethinking his will. But you know what? I felt free, Mom, like I could finally breathe. I smiled, my heart swelling. That's what happens when you choose yourself. "David, you drop their baggage and pick up your own life." He paused, his voice softening. "Sarah wants to see you. She wants to apologize, not just for her parents, but for staying quiet. She says she wants to learn from you, to be better. I thought for a moment, stirring my coffee. Tell her she's welcome to come, but not today. He needs time to sit with this, to figure out what she really wants to say. Quick apologies don't mean much. Real ones take reflection. David agreed. I'll tell her. Mom, how are you holding up? After all that? I looked out at the street, the sun climbing higher. I'm good, honey. Better than good. I said what I needed to say, and I don't regret a word. I'm at peace. We hung up and I decided to do something I hadn't in ages. Walk with no destination, just to feel the city's rhythm. I threw on jeans, a plain sweater, old sneakers, and headed out. The streets were alive, families laughing, vendors calling out, the smell of fresh bagels in the air. I ended up at a park, sitting on a bench, watching people live their ordinary, beautiful lives. An old man sat beside me, feeding pigeons from a paper bag. Nice day, huh? He said, his voice warm. Gorgeous, I replied. He tossed crumbs, the birds flocking. I come here every morning, he said. Clears my head. You look like you're clearing yours too. I smiled. Something like that. Had a rough night. He nodded like he'd heard it all before. Family stuff? I laughed softly. How'd you guess? He shrugged. Seen that look a lot. Like you just fought for your place in the world. I tilted my head, curious. You're perceptive. He grinned, his eyes crinkling. Live long enough, you get good at reading people. Want to share? I'm just an old guy with birds. I hesitated, then said, I let some people think I was nobody last night, just to see how they'd treat me. They failed the test. He chuckled. Smart move. People show their souls when they think you've got nothing. His words landed like truth, simple and sharp. They did, I said. Treated me like I was invisible, then tried to pay me to stay that way. He shook his head, tossing more crumbs. People with money sometimes forget how to be human. But you've got something they don't. You've got heart. I smiled, warmed by his words. Thanks, I needed that. He waved it off. Just calling it like I see it. Keep your heart, lady. That's what matters. He stood, tipped his hat and shuffled off, leaving me with the pigeons and a quiet sense of gratitude. 3 days later, my doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened it. Sarah. She stood there, no makeup, hair in a loose ponytail, wearing a plain hoodie and jeans. No trace of the polished woman from the restaurant. She looked raw, nervous, human. Eleanor, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Can I come in? I stepped aside. Of course. She walked in, her eyes scanning my apartment. The worn rug, the old bookshelves, the lack of anything flashy. She sat when I gestured to the couch, her hands twisting in her lap. I sat across from her, silent, giving her space to find her words. I don't know how to start, she said finally, her voice trembling. Just start where it feels right, I replied, my tone gentle but steady. She took a shaky breath. I came to apologize, not just for my parents, but for me. For staying quiet, for letting them treat you like that, for not seeing it sooner. Her eyes met mine, raw with guilt. I saw every moment, their comments, their looks, the way they made you feel small. And I did nothing. I've been doing nothing my whole life. I leaned back, listening, letting her unravel. She continued, her voice steadier now. My parents, they didn't start with money. They grew up dirt poor in a tiny village. No electricity, no running water. Working fields as kids. They watched their families struggle. Saw people die because they couldn't afford doctors. They clawed their way out, built a business, made a fortune. But that fear of being poor again, it never left them. It's why they talk about money all the time, why they judge people by it. To them, it's survival. I nodded. I get it, Sarah. Trauma shapes people, but it doesn't excuse cruelty. I know, she said, her eyes filling with tears. I grew up with their rules. Don't question, don't argue, just be grateful. They paid for my schools, my trips, my life. I thought disagreeing was betrayal. But that night, when you stood up to them, When you showed who you really are, it broke something in me. I saw how wrong they were, how wrong I was for staying silent. She wiped her face. I don't want to be like them. I don't want to measure people by what they have. I want to be better. I took a sip of water, letting her words settle. Sarah, I didn't come to that dinner to change you. I came to protect myself, to see who I was dealing with. But if it woke you up, that's a start. You've got to decide what kind of person you want to be. Not just for David, but for you. She nodded, her face determined. I want to learn from you, Eleanor. I saw strength in you, real strength. Not the kind that comes from money or status. You have this quiet power, this dignity. I want that. I smiled softly. You don't learn that from me. Sarah, you learn it by living, by making choices that align with who you want to be. It's hard. People will judge you, misunderstand you. But if you stay true to yourself, you'll find peace. That's what matters. Her eyes brightened, like a weight was lifting. I want to try. I want to live without that pressure to prove myself, to impress everyone. I want to be real. I nodded. Then start small. Question why you do things. What drives you? Ask yourself if you're living for you or for someone else's approval. She swallowed hard. What about my parents? Do you think they'll ever change? I looked at her, honest but kind. I don't know. Change starts with seeing you're wrong, and they don't. They think the world's the problem, not them. But you can break that cycle. You can choose differently. She nodded, tears falling again. David and I set boundaries. We told them no more money talk, no more control. If they can't respect that, they'll see less of us. They didn't take it well. Mom said I'm ungrateful. Dad threatened to cut me off. But for the first time, I didn't care. I felt free. That's the first step, I said. Freedom comes when you stop letting their expectations chain you. She looked at me, her voice firm. I want to keep you in my life, Eleanor. Not just as David's mom, but as someone I can learn from. Will you let me? I smiled, warm and real. You're already here, Sarah. That's enough for now. Just keep listening to that voice inside you, the one that knows right from wrong. It'll guide you. We hugged. A long, honest hug, no pretense. Just two people connecting. She left lighter, her steps surer, like she was carrying hope instead of shame. After Sarah left, I sat back on my couch, the quiet of my apartment wrapping around me like a blanket. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. My phone buzzed. A text from David. Mom, Sarah told me about your talk. Thank you for giving her a chance. I love you more than ever. I replied, love you too, honey, always. I set the phone down and looked around my simple space. Old furniture, no luxuries, just home. And I felt whole, not because of the money in my accounts or the title on my business card, but because I'd lived my truth, protected my peace, and built something real with my son. Days passed and life settled back into its rhythm. I went to work, signed contracts, led meetings, came home to my quiet apartment. But something had shifted. I wasn't carrying the weight of pretending anymore. I'd spent years hiding my success, not out of shame, but to shield David, to let him grow without the shadow of wealth. Now he knew. Sarah knew. And in a strange way, it freed me to just be Eleanor. Mother, executive, woman who'd fought for every inch of her life. I thought about Margaret and Richard often, not with anger, but with clarity. They'd built their world on appearances, on control, on the belief that money could buy respect. But respect isn't purchased. It's earned through kindness, through listening, through seeing people as they are, not as their bank accounts define them. I wondered if they'd ever see that, if they'd ever look in the mirror and question themselves. Maybe one day. But that wasn't my burden to carry. A week later, I met David and Sarah for coffee in a small Brooklyn cafe, the kind with mismatched mugs and wobbly tables. Sarah was nervous at first, but she opened up, talking about her plans to volunteer, to rethink her career, to live more intentionally. David listened, his hand on hers, proud but quiet. They were building something new, something theirs, not dictated by her parents' expectations. I watched them, my heart full, knowing they'd face challenges but trusting they'd face them together. As for me, I kept living my way. Simple, steady, true. I didn't need to prove anything. Not to Margaret, not to Richard, not to anyone. My wealth wasn't in my bank account. It was in the love I had for my son, the peace in my heart, the life I'd built from nothing. I'd faced their judgment, exposed their flaws, and walked away stronger. And in that, I found something priceless. The freedom to be exactly who I am. No masks, no apologies. So what do you think? Did this story hit you as hard as it hit me living it? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you loved it, hit that like button, or send a super thanks to keep these stories coming. There's more where this came from. Check out the videos on the screen for other tales. That'll grab your heart. Subscribe, stick around, and let's keep sharing stories that matter with love and respect. I'll see you in the next one.